hope you enjoy the session. Jacky, Ron, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Holly.
Thanks, Holly.
And thanks, Ron, for joining us.
No, excited to be here. It's so great to share the stage with you. Reminds me back of the Lyft days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you everyone else for joining us. So we want to jump in first and talk about what we'll be covering. Ron and I are going to be having a pretty interactive discussion here about a variety of different aspects of a location agnostic talent strategy. But here's the framework for the discussion. So we want to set the stage, a little bit of a look back of how we got here in this new world of normal. And talk about our perspectives and is the future really location agnostic? Is this a temporary situation we're in, or what are our thoughts there? Both the pros and cons of taking a location agnostic approach, and really the key considerations when making a shift and how to get started. So how to put this into reality and bring it into an organization. So before we jump into the content here, we wanted to do a quick pulse check with the folks on the call and understand where you are at in your journey of determining your talent location strategy. So when you think about post-pandemic world, what is your organization planning to do? Are you planning at this point to require your employees to come back and be in person in an office? Is there a mostly in person, so a few days a week in an office? Are you thinking that you'll be hybrid? With people potentially in specific roles that need to be in offices, or people who potentially want to work outside of their house because it's not an ideal working situation? Are you planning to be fully remote, not have any offices? Remote first is what I'm hearing a lot, the term these days. Or are you undecided and still on this journey and trying to figure it out? And potentially maybe that's why you joined today. So would love, just give it a few more seconds for folks. All right. Okay, so looks like 80% are hybrid. Great. And I think as we get into the conversation, that's probably where we're going to net out in what that a lot of organizations are doing, especially right now, just kind of with the uncertainty of where the future of this pandemic and work lies. So perfect. So to quickly jump into how we got here before let's just set the stage. You know, for folks who have been in the HR space, and Ron, I know you and I definitely have worked in this space, we were already in a really challenging war for talent before COVID even hit, right? This was something that we were constantly talking about from an employment brand. And, you know, then all of a sudden, let's say 18 months ago, this idea of COVID hit. And it really obviously took all of us by surprise and quickly had to react, right, in organizations. And then what I would say is personally, Ron, I don't know if you felt the same way, but about 6 months ago when there was a sight of lockdowns being lifted and it felt like vaccines were starting to roll out, I kind of felt this sense of relief that, okay, as HR, we probably made it through one of the most challenging experiences professionally of this quick adaptation to remote work that was necessitated. And so I felt like, okay, we're starting to come out of this, we made it. And then we have this idea of the great resignation happening across the country and the world, where I think the data was just released that the US Bureau of Labor Statistics said over 20 million workers in the US alone quit their jobs between April and August and are not actively really looking at getting back into the workforce immediately. And the same thing in Europe. It was reported that 20 million fewer people are in work than there were before the pandemic struck. So, you know, we're in this place where we have this huge gap of skilled workers, and it's an employees market right now. And this kind of increasingly competitive war for talent that we thought was already there is really exacerbated. So
yeah, I totally feel the same way, Jacky. The thing is, it's not just corporate though, it's also field ops now. More and more, that war for talent is insane as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the studies are talking about how it's hitting different industries in different ways. And a lot of the field workers, different industries are, there's big conversations around compensation and people wages being enough in these kind of field roles or in restaurant hospitality businesses where people are choosing not to work because the wages aren't high enough to make it so that all the childcare and other things that they have to mitigate now are actually covered. So it's hitting everyone in every industry in very similar but also different ways. So, all of that leads us to a place of, okay, so how do we compete, right? And my personal perspective is we compete by listening to what employees are saying and what employees want. And that sounds, overly simplified, but again, we're talking about a basic exercise here of supply and demand, and the demand for workers is higher than the supply right now. So really taking a strong look at what employees and people are saying that they're looking for from their employer. And we did a study at Topia called our Adapt survey in late 2020 and early 2021, and had some interesting data that came out of this, and also got some additional data from Air Inc. And so at a high level here, what we heard was that 91% of employees said they should be able to work from wherever they want, as long as they're getting their work done. I mean, they demonstrated they could do that in the pandemic. 94% of HR says that they believe that remote work supports a more diverse team, which we know is an increasing focus across almost every organization at this point, I would hope. 83% of people feel like teams should be built based on experience and skill sets, not location. And that 86% of companies expect an increase in remote working requests or arrangements. So I know we're personally feeling this in our conversations here at Topia. Ron, I'd love to hear from you. What are you hearing from employees at Booster? How are you tackling distributed work requests?
Yeah, no, it's very similar to what you showed as well too. I think the way that we're trying to frame it is that we want to be very open to what employees want, feel like it's productive and so forth, but we're trying to frame all of this within like 4 key areas so that we have some type of foundation of making sure that this fits the business needs as well too. The 4 areas we're talking about, which I think is similar to what you're saying, is productivity, collaboration, talent, diversity, as well as inclusion are the 4 pillars that we're looking at. And that helps us determine how we can, adhere to work requests and so forth, and distributed types of moves within an organization. So I think it's pretty common what I'm hearing in other companies as well too. And I think we're only in the early stages of this, but I think it's going to continue, but we're going to see how it evolves.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you assess each request as it comes in based on those pillars, or are you building policies based on the pillars?
We're doing both. We're assessing against these pillars, and we're also building policies of what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to go into how we're actually handling remote first or the different types of work that we're trying to prescribe for individuals as well.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So great segue, actually. Location agnostic, it can mean different things at different organizations. And so, taking a step back here, the way that we've thought about it here is in 3 real buckets. So there is traditional mobility, which, don't really care where the candidate or employee is. We will hire them and we'll relocate them to where we want them to be. So that can be very much of a recruiting strategy. Hey, let's just get the most qualified person, and then we will actually move them to where we need them to be from a company perspective. I think there's remote hybrid, which is becoming more and more top of mind and part of the conversations, especially throughout the pandemic. It was already coming into existence, and the pandemic just very much accelerated everyone being open to this. Don't really care where the candidate is or the person is. We'll hire them and let them work where they are. So that's a true kind of opposite side of the spectrum, where the employee makes it work. And then I think the third is remote hybrid within parameters, right? So we don't really care where you are as long as it's certain places that we know we can legally employ you, or potentially within where we know we already have people, right? So there's different parameters that different companies can set here. I would say at Topia, we are definitely in this last bucket, but also trend towards that middle bucket. So, you know, we need to be able to legally employ someone, but as much as possible, we try and make it work and pull different levers that we have with different working arrangements based on where someone is, because we really are focused on finding the right person for the role, rather than focusing on where they are based. Ron, I'd love to know, you know, especially since you have a ton of experience in talent acquisition, right? Where do you also see this trend now, but also going? What's your perspective there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the remote hybrid with parameters is probably where it's going. Again, leaning a little bit more towards remote hybrid as well too. But I'll give you examples like Booster. We operate in the U.S., so we're pretty agnostic what state you're in. It's pretty easy to operate in those states. But if you're in a foreign country where we don't have business, it might be really hard for us to have the business case to employ someone there. So I think within the US, we're very flexible. Within international, it's kind of depending on, are you going to have operations there? You know, what is the need? Because in a lot of these different countries, employing people, there's a lot of costs, there's a lot of administrative work, and, you know, it could be a little bit dicey. But the way that I see this too is, you know, I'm not a fan of 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, and you can kind of figure it out. The way that I think it's going to happen is more team determined, where you give some guidelines like your remote hybrid with parameters. But what does that mean? So like if you're a hardware engineering team, well, you have to work on actual products. So you might determine that you need to be located in a certain hub area. And based off of those requirements, that will help determine your recruiting strategy and how often you're in the office and things of that nature. And so if you're in an organization, say like people can be pretty flexible. You could be located anywhere. But I think there should be like policies where you get together once every month, you know, for a couple of days to do collaborative issues, or just to have that human connection that people still value in these times. And so I think you have to give guidelines and parameters to it. And I like calling it more team determined, because if you're 2 days in, 3 days out, it's not intentional. And you might not feel like you're on the equal playing field that the pandemic put everyone on. So I think you have to be very cautious and very careful that you have policies where people still feel included and open to the same opportunities everyone else has. And I think that's something that we're very focused on.
Yeah. And some companies are saying that's why they're choosing remote first, because it puts everyone on equal playing field versus some people having that in-office experience, and some not, right? And that ties right into the diversity conversation. And there's whole discussions around, you know, are men going to be more able to go back into an office compared to women? And does that create a different experience? So, I mean, we could go probably down a very interesting rat hole there. But one thing that I found interesting that you said is, from our experience, sometimes I personally have actually found new states in the US harder to set up than fluidity within Europe, right? So it's so much about you know, so much about how you're currently set up and having the right structure in place and technology in place, which we'll get into, to be able to kind of look at this and mitigate it proactively and understand the implications. I think to me, it's all doable. It's just a question of, you know, what's your timeline? What are the roles? What's the appetite there? We focused a lot when we talk about parameters. A big focus recently has been time zones. So rather than a location, we are really focused on time zones to help coverage, to help mitigate burnout, so that we don't have someone necessarily in one time zone trying to work with someone 10 hours away, if that's not absolutely necessary, right? Again, so it's just however we can proactively mitigate some of the challenges that this does create.
Especially if you're a cross-functional organization like we are at Booster. If you're working different time zones, you might be early in the morning, late at night, and like you said, it's going to lead to burnout issues. You're not going to be as efficient. Projects are probably going to lag. You're going to have morale issues, and so I think time difference is a very key component of this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been an interesting one for us. We've ended up with we're a lot of people, you know, US East Coast and UK is where we kind of our middle ground, UK, Ireland. Um, so, you know, we've hit on this a little bit, but I think there are a lot of benefits to going location agnostic. So first we touched on is employee preference, employees and people in general saying, I would like to have the flexibility myself to work wherever I want. The second is really having a diversified candidate pipeline. If you choose to be location agnostic, you're unlocking all these new pipelines that you are otherwise limiting by saying you're going to have a search in a specific market. I think there is business impact to your point around productivity. This could go both ways, but I think you know, you do have the opportunity for increased agility, an opportunity which I really tried to drive into the organization of managing to impact, managing rather than managing to hours worked or someone sitting next to you, right? Getting rid of this stigma that you have to be somewhere to actually be a top performer. You don't have to be sitting next to someone from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's about what you produce and what you work, what your impact of your work is. And then cost, which again could go both ways. But Ron, I'd love to know from you. There's obviously a lot to unpack here, but which of these buckets stand out to you the most? So, you know, if you were going to your leadership team and kind of making this people business case for having a location agnostic strategy, is there's one of these areas you would lean into more than the other?
I think two of them stand out to me: the diversified candidate pipeline and the business impact. Especially, you know, from a business impact standpoint, you know, if you are in certain markets, you're limited in the past to working with the talent that's in those markets. And you know, when everyone's looking for the same type of person in the Bay Area, it's really challenging. So it opens up a whole new ballgame where there's a lot of talent that people haven't really leaned into. And if you have the opportunity to employ them in Florida or Iowa or whatever it is, and they could have massive impact on your organization. So I think business impact is very important. And I think the diversity is crucial as well too, because I think, you know, you get locked into, we're in a bubble here in the Bay Area, and I'm sure other locations are as well too. But if you have people that come from different geographies or different countries, they might have a different perspective that can add to what you're trying to do as an organization. One example that I'll give from my most recent job before Booster was at Keep Trucking, where we had 1,000 employees in Pakistan. And that was the secret sauce for Keep Trucking to actually build a great diversified engineering organization. We employed, of those 1,000, probably had about 200 engineers in Pakistan. So, and they worked US hours, which was a little crazy because it's so basically they were working through the night versus working during the day. But the impact it had on the business and the opportunity for anyone to work when they saw fit really helped the company. And same thing, had that diversified angle. So I think those two are the pillars. Cost is also an interesting one. And Jacky, I know we talked briefly about it. Compensation is going to really become more prominent once we have more of a steady state, probably in 2022 and beyond. How do you pay people? Do you pay people Bay Area salaries? Do you pay people with geo differences? I mean, my philosophy is if you're a current employee and you want to relocate to a different area, we're probably not going to change your compensation. But what we will do is, you know, when you're up for performance reviews or when you're up for promotions or what have you, you might get smaller raises, or you might not get a raise for a while until your compensation aligns to what that market comp is. So we're not taking comp away, but we're not adding to it. And then if there's the other situation where someone wants to move to the Bay Area, if it's driven by the company, we'll change their comp. But if it's not driven by the company, we'll give them little increments to get up to the standard in that location. And so I don't know what your philosophy is on that, Jacky, but that's kind of, you know, the three things that I think about in these areas.
Yeah, it's quite similar. You know, from the comp conversation is a hot debate right now, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. So many different factors that go into it. But I've heard of a lot of companies normalizing comp based on market. So if someone chooses to move to what is traditionally a lesser paid talent cost market, lowering that. I feel similar to you from a perspective of existing employees, and then there's also the opportunity to normalize that as you go backfill. But I think the important thing to keep in mind is it actually works to our detriment that every company is doing it differently, because someone can be living, to your point, in Idaho, and they're going to choose to go work for that company that's not doing geo differentiation, right? If they can be making something similar to a San Francisco paid market, right? That is an extreme example, but it's something to keep in mind as we think about people, existing employees already moving. If they're going to have the opportunity to work for a remote first company that's going to pay them a certain salary to be anywhere, like, we're already at a disadvantage there. So it's just lots of factors, and there's no kind of standard. And I feel like it's just another tricky piece going into this whole talent war conversation.
Right, because I think in that scenario, then it's the other, intangibles and tangibles that you provide the employee, right? It's like the impact they're having the organization. Are they connected to the mission? Well, I think we're going to talk about employee well-being is just gone crazy, or I wouldn't say gone crazy, but it's really reflective upon all the issues that people are experiencing, and people want to be taken care of, not just health benefits, but a lot of other things as well too. So it's cost is always the primary one, but then there's other things where you can try to mitigate that differential.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So with that, there are also potential pitfalls, right? And I say more challenges. In my mind, this slide is titled potential, very, very intentionally, because I think in each of these buckets, there are ways to mitigate them. So the first that you just touched on is burnout. There's this missed connection we talked about earlier of not necessarily having that in-person conversation and opportunity with other people, and management challenges, right? If we're not setting management and leadership up for success, we didn't necessarily hire people managers that had managed remote global distributed teams, right? So making sure that we are enabling that part of the population. And then compliance concerns. I mean, for us, especially, it's top of mind of how to manage that, especially to our point earlier, as you go into new locations, making sure that you're set up, but also in existing places, how do we even know where people are right now, right? And that's a really interesting challenge and thing to be thinking about. So, Ron, I'd love to know from you, what tactics or strategies have you implemented or seen be successful in mitigating some of these areas?
Yeah, I mean, well, starting with the burnout piece, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm in back-to-back Zoom meetings all day long. You can't go to the bathroom. You can't. I'm sure people on this call feel that way, and it seems like you're working more hours. Except though, when I do go into office every once in a while, it's still an hour commute, and I hate those commutes now. So I'd rather be in the office. But it's a balance, and there really are no boundaries. Like you could be working and getting calls in the evening just as much during the day now. And so I mentioned about the whole well-being of a person. What we've done is we've implemented a mental health solution. We wanted to do solutions not just for health benefits, but is there someone that you can talk to that's not your family, right? That can be objective, not part of the company. So we introduced Modern Health, and the adoption rate for that was over 50% right off the gate, and not just for corporate workers, but also field employees. The other thing we did a financial well-being program. I don't know about you, Jacky, but most employees, corporate, non-corporate, don't understand what they're earning in a company. They just think of base, but they don't understand equity. They don't understand the other benefits. And so what this company does, it's kind of like a wealth management for the masses. So it helps educate you on what you're getting. And that's been a secret sauce for us for these truck drivers that we employ, because base, even 25 cents more is a big difference to them. But if they understand some of these other things, that's going to help them relate and see what your company is offering. So that's what we've done on the burnout side. I think in the misconnections, that's why team determined about getting people together on a regular cadence is important. We've also initiated for every team, whatever cadence they want is like stand-ups on a regular basis. So for me, for the people team, what I do is have a stand-up on Monday mornings and Friday mornings. So talk about the weekend, then you talk about like what are the key things you're doing for work. On Friday, we kind of do a fun day. So everyone is so talented. So we pick someone who has some special talent. Like I had one person on at Keep Trucking who was an opera singer before. And so she sang for us, and it was crazy amazing. So I think doing things like that makes people feel like they're still connected, and we're aligned too. Because if you're alone, sometimes you could feel like, oh my God, I work in isolation. But having these stand-ups and training for managers, how to coach people, how to have your one-on-ones, how to be more on point is very, very critical. And so those types of things are areas that we've worked on. One of the big problems that we had, and you touched on compliance, is payroll for us, because you don't know where people are located. I don't know how many times we've had individuals saying, okay, being charged California taxes, and they go, well, no, I've been living in Texas for 6 months. I shouldn't be paid, charged California taxes. And our, having field workers and corporate, our field workers' time and attendance doesn't integrate with our HRIS system or our payroll system. So the amount of errors in there, and, for field workers, they live paycheck by paycheck. And so if you screw up their taxes, you're going to hear about it. And so we're trying to figure out a system solution for this, but it's really challenging. It's not only compliance, but it's also, this is their lives. And if you get this wrong, it's really, really tough.
Yeah. Music to my ears, because that's part of what we do at Topia. So we'll talk about it when we get into the technology slide in a bit, but that's part of what our solution can help with and help solve for companies. So I think there are a lot of different opportunities here from mitigation perspective. I think technology is absolutely one of them, and we have a slide. We'll talk about that in a little bit, Ron. We've done a few other things on kind of the softer culture side here as well, to mitigate burnout and this connection piece and management challenges. So we started doing some global recharge days. So we just introduced, and it's not, set in stone that we will do this every quarter, but there's such a heavy quarter end push for us that in May we gave the first Friday of the quarter off. And for everyone at the company, it's kind of an extra company holiday. And then we've done this subsequently for the following quarters, because it's one thing to say, everyone go take your PTO or your holiday, make sure you're still using it. But it's very different to actually do that if you can't travel or don't want to travel amidst the pandemic, but also if you know that when you take that vacation, your Slack or whatever, your email is still building because everyone else is still working, right? So recognizing that it's very different when you individually take a time off versus when the entire company is essentially shut down. And so we've introduced that to help with burnout. We've also introduced kind of this no internal meeting Fridays. And it's not strict. It's just kind of a little bit of a cultural nudge that Zoom burnout, Zoom fatigue is real. And so we do a similar kind of lightweight stand up on Friday mornings. That is kind of the only internal meeting that is standing on the calendar. But we recommend things like one-on-ones, interviews that we're scheduling, and other team meetings. Avoid Fridays whenever possible. Obviously, there will still be customer obligations and all these other things that have to happen, but just a nudge for people to give themselves a little bit of a break from the constant video conferencing. And then we found ways to connect people otherwise, right? I said we do the stand-up similar to you. We started connecting our managers, and we were doing manager roundtables, and now we're shifting and doing smaller subsets of coaching circles. So it's about 5 managers that are going to get together every other month, and it'll be the same people that you're working with and talking with around, a topic of your choosing. So it's a way for our managers to learn from each other and to build those cross-functional relationships. So, lots of different strategies and tactics here. And again, reasons why I put it as potential pitfalls, because these are challenges, but I think there are a lot of different best practices and ways to navigate them if you're just kind of thinking about them proactively. Okay, so shifting our conversation a little bit into, all right, we've made the business case as a company, how you've decided you want to do this, how do you actually go about making the shift? And again, navigating some of those compliance challenges. So we'll double click a little bit into each of these areas. The first is just naturally, I think as HR, our tendency is to start with a policy. And, how are we going to do this? How are we going to communicate to the organization? In my mind, and Ron, I know even just in our conversations, but also in us working together at Lyft, it's actually much higher level than that. Rather than starting with a policy, it's, what are you actually trying to solve for? What is your business approach? Because all of that needs to inform the policy rather than the other way around, starting with a policy and kind of forcing that into an organization. So the way that kind of I personally have thought about developing this is, from a location agnostic strategy, what's your business approach when we go back to those three buckets? Is it mobility? Is it remote, hybrid? Is it within parameters? Is it somewhere in between? Does it apply to all roles, right? Starting to ask the questions, to your point, field workers and then corporate workers, like there's so many different classifications that every organization has. How are you going to monitor it, track compliance, track approvals and workflows? And then what are your other implications, right? Compensation philosophy. Are you going to have offices? If so, where? What are they going to be used for? And all of that kind of works as a funnel to lead to your output, which should be a policy or a practice or a process there. So Ron, you and I have talked a little bit about vaccination status is a great example of kind of an exercise a lot of us have just gone through of doing this. Can you talk about how you approached that policy development at Booster?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's a very hot topic at Booster. I mean, everyone's pretty much remote for right now, but especially with the mandates coming from the government about, a certain size of company has to have mandated vaccinations. We have some offices, but very small, like in the Bay Area, but one of our big offices is in Dallas, where we have probably the majority of our corporate people. And, no matter what, political affiliation you have, I mean, it just, in Texas, there's less people vaccinated than there are in California and some other places. So you have to do what you think is best for the business and what that looks like. So we did a survey of people who are they vaccinated? Do they intend to be vaccinated? Do they not intend to be vaccinated? And it was all over the place. I mean, and there's some parts of California, like Orange County was one that most of the people don't intend to get vaccinated. So, and we have salespeople there. And so we took the approach that for right now, we're going to mandate everyone to be vaccinated in a corporate location, anywhere you are, that if you come into an office, you can't come in unless you're vaccinated. And so we built this return to office type of Google site that put all these protocols in place of, you have to show your vaccine card, you have to put in times you're going to come in and all those types of things, which people adhered to. But, I'm a person, I think you're the same way, that I like to be consistent across geographies, across different types of workers and so forth. And our drivers of trucks who are in the yards and work to actually fuel the vehicles, most of them were not vaccinated. And the work that they do, so what Booster does, so say, those Amazon trucks that deliver packages all day long, well, at night, they go park in a yard. And so what we do is we go to their yards during the night and we fill all of their vehicles contactlessly. So it reduces their carbon footprint of going to and from a gas station, as well as the labor costs. Well, there's one tanker driver who actually goes to each of the yards and does this. So they work in isolation. They do not come in contact with anyone, not each other, not any clients. So we made the decision that for corporate, we're doing mandatory vaccine requirement. For field ops, we're not mandating it because of the work that they're doing. Because we know that if we mandated it as well too, they would have quit. A lot of them would have gone to the next organization. So this is a policy that you have to think about what's going to affect your business and how can you do it equally, that it doesn't feel like you're discriminating against someone or favoring another individual. And so that it was a very tough choice, but that's how we landed. And so far it's been good, but it goes against my trying to be consistent across the board, but it's something that is key for the business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on the consistency. I probably got that from working together, rubbed off a little bit on each other, but and it adds increasing complexity for us here at Topia with because I try and do that with my team with everything that we do. Like I remember we rolled out a handbook a few years ago and we were told by lawyers that there was no way to roll out a global handbook. And I'm like, we're doing it. And we have one, right? Okay. And so, but we ran into similar challenges with our vaccine policy as well. And wanting to do this globally, and every country also had different requirements and different local regulations, and there are also different requirements around how you can even track and ask, and you get into GDPR complexities as you start to ask this in Europe. So where we actually landed was we differentiated based on the activity and who you were going to be interacting with. So from us, we figure we can control the environment as much as possible if you're only interacting with other Topia employees, right? So in an office or a meeting where it's just other Topia people, and we decided not to require vaccination there because it's not, you know, in the US, we're kind of very leaned on this side of the spectrum, but that doesn't necessarily apply everywhere. But any sort of interaction or meeting with people that are not Topia employees, whether that's a customer, whether that's at an event, we are requiring vaccination. But we're also operating very much as we do with all of our policies of this is something that's there and we trust our employees to do it. If you break a policy, we'll manage that, but not necessarily kind of asking for proof of vaccination at this point, just given the size and stage we're at. So again, it goes back to a business approach and how we had to develop that policy based on what was realistic for the business and what we were going to be able to feasibly do. So the next thing also, once you've figured out your policy, another aspect of location agnostic is just thinking about employment arrangements, right? And all the compliance bits that go into this, you touched on, whether that's payroll, whether that is legal, tax, employment, right? How can I even employ someone in a certain country? Are you going to do it as full-time, part-time, temporary with your own entity? Are you going to leverage a PEO? There's assignments, contractors, partners. There's a lot of different ways to do this. And this is where it's going back to what I was saying of that parameters, but we try as much as possible to pull the levers to employ people creatively as we can, again, obviously in a very legal and compliant way. So there's a lot that goes into this, and it's a good segue into the next slide, which is just really making sure that you have the right infrastructure set up to manage all of these different arrangements and manage the risk and manage the compliance implications based on the route and path that you take. So for us, I think it's about technology. It's about policies as well as technology, right? And from my perspective, technology can never really be implemented too early. My team probably gets exhausted at hearing me say, like, let's get that into a tool so that we can focus on higher impact work. Like that is like my tagline. And I don't want you to be doing something manual. I want you to be doing something that a tool can't do for us. So we really leverage this. And then at Topia, obviously, our technology is all about having a global talent mobility team and being able to manage and flag compliance risks that come with having a distributed team, automate workflows, providing data insights. So it's basically having this whole dashboard and way of managing a global and distributed team and understanding all the implications of that. So Ron, your payroll example is a perfect one of there are aspects to one of our products that allow you to know where your people are in a variety of different ways, whether it's they opt in and they tell you where they are, whether it's through tracking on their phone. There are a lot of different ways, and then it flags when someone is in a different state that they should be, and the risks, because what people don't know is that there are not only employer implications to that, but there are also individual implications from a tax perspective. So that's just one aspect of what we do. So I think this technology is a perfect example of being able to unlock time rather than worrying about these things that otherwise HR and payroll are scrambling to do, right?
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I think we need Topia for sure.
Great. This was not pre-planned.
No, it's definitely not pre-planned. I mean, the thing is, our tech stack is horrible from an HR standpoint. We have systems that don't talk to each other. Our HCM is Bamboo. Our ATS is Greenhouse. We really don't have an engagement tool. I mean, we use Culture Amp for surveys and stuff like that. But I think we need something that is more integrated across the board. We have Greenhouse for corporate, Fountain for field workers. We have Deputy that tracks time for field workers, and nothing talks to each other. It's insane. Yeah. And so figuring that out. But a couple of things I want to touch on, like collaboration tools, are so critical because our organization go to market and operations and technology have to work together in order, because we're a highly regulated business. So we have to all talk with each other and figure out, is this the right client? Can we roll out the operations, and what's the technical backing for it? And so we're looking for collaboration tools to figure that out. Smart Sheets is one. I don't know if you've heard of it, Jacky, but that's one that seems to be the best for us right now, because you have like the tech people want Jira and other things, and we're trying to figure all that out now, but it's so important. But one of the technologies that I found during the pandemic initially that really helped keep that connection going is Donut. Have you worked with Donut before? Have you
I
heard
haven't worked with them, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
So basically what it does, it gives you virtual connections with people. So it randomly picks like 3 people who don't know each other, and you set up like a virtual coffee chat. So you get to know each other. You put time on the calendar, 3 different people have never met each other, and that you just get to feel like you're still a part of the company. You're meeting people from different industries and so forth. And so that was very helpful, and people loved that. And the engagement of that, because you can decline it. Almost 80% of people who were picked to meet with each other actually did. So those types of things helps with engagement, helps that you have this technology tool that otherwise it would be some HR person going, well, let's just randomly pick these people to get together, right? This actually does it for you. And so those types of tools are critical if you have a remote first policy, because I mean, think about it. If you're hiring all these people, how many people have actually met in person? Very few. And it's, yes, you can develop a connection over video, but you need to spend some quality time not talking about, work and thinking about like, well, what's your challenges? Like what's your situation at home like? And I think having these types of tools that can help foster that is very important going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. The HR tech stack is, I think it's being reimagined right now because it used to just be thought of as traditional, ATS, HCM, and potentially feeding into payroll, right? And these other the kind of ancillary systems. But now, to your point, it's rethinking new technologies, whether that's thinking about how we engage, how we measure culture, the talent mobility space, perfect example. Onboarding is a big one now that we're doing that from a remote perspective. So I completely agree. And again, to me, this is like the area that cannot be underestimated. And it can be pretty cut and dry of making a business case and the costs here, because it goes back to the managing compliance, managing workflows, and freeing up time, right? For, again, people to go back and focus on this higher impact work. So definitely opportunity there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think the last bucket, a consideration in making the switch to location agnostic, to me is talent acquisition. And I say this from a perspective of, if going back to what we've talked about in the beginning, if employees and candidates are saying that they want to be able to work from anywhere, and you're going to do this in some aspect, you should promote it like crazy and shout it from the rooftops and let people know that you're doing it versus flying under the radar. And, Ron, you worked for very well-known employer brands. How would you recommend that others amplify and kind of communicate their location approach to employees and candidates?
Yeah, I mean, employment branding is, I think, the most critical at any point in my career now. It's because, like you said, you really have to get your brand out there, get what you're about out there. I think promote your values, promote what it's like to work in your company, especially being remote. And I think a lot of the things that people still want, they want to work with smart people, they want to have impact, and they want to be connected to that mission or value. So putting blogs out there, putting a day in the life of what an engineer or what an operations person does in the field, if you promote that on all your social channels, and have people like you, me, and people in the business going out and talking about that in a broad perspective, so that people understand what your company does and how you operate and the type of environment that you're creating for people, is so critical. And so we're working with the Muse right now to help us do that, and we're doing it for both corporate and for the field ops area. And we've rolled out a day in the life of a truck driver at Booster right now, in terms of fueling and all of those types of things. And there's tons of people that actually, wanted to be a part of it. And the other thing we mentioned about the talent strategies for, tech, where, engineers are such high demand. I mean, truck driving is very, very hard to do. And in our field, you have to have very specific requirements. You have to have hazmat certification, a certain CDL license. So what we just did is we said, we're going to create our own CDL school. So we're going to take applicants who want to make more money, get into a field, and we'll train them for 2 months, and then they'll be at a higher wage and be able to do what the other already endorsed people do. And so that has been wonderful for us in terms of retention, attraction, and everything. So it's trying to be creative in your areas and trying to do something that's new, and doing this whole CDL school that we call it. So we kind of call it like Booster University for drivers, really changed the landscape on how we're attracting people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and for us, something that resonates so much with candidates is, what we do as a business too, and making sure that we really talk about that and talk about our values, which you hit on. And it's a good segue into this next piece, right? Of making sure that as you go through this entire experience or shift to being location agnostic, you keep engagement and culture in the forefront of your focus. And we've talked about this a little bit throughout our conversation today, but to me, I kind of think of these different pillars of things that need to remain top of mind. In the center around all of it is communication, because, again, people may laugh at me internally at Topia because it's like I view this no such thing as over communication, especially right now and in distributed teams. And it always surprises me when I feel like I've said something 6 times and someone's still like, what? I missed that. And I'm like, okay, great example. We need to keep going. We need to find different ways, right? But an interesting kind of bubble to double click on this slide is the expectation setting around a distributed team and a distributed workforce, and based on your location strategy, right? And values is a big piece of that. And it's setting the expectation of what we mean. And at Topia, we have our values. They're up on our career site, and they always resonate with candidates and with employees, but we went further and created what's called the Topia Way, which is actually translating those values, which are very high level, into specific behaviors. So when we say be global citizens, what we mean is assume positive intent. Pick up the phone or Zoom and get in touch with someone if you feel like you're talking like this, right? And remember that we all communicate differently across cultures. And again, from a global team, it resonates, but we've taken that a step further to make sure that our values are really clear to people of what we mean, because that's the expectation of how this all works, right? Especially in a distributed team. So what have you done throughout the pandemic, Ron, to kind of keep culture front and center in the employee experience?
Well, I love that, Jacky. That's amazing. And that's what we're trying to do now too. We're trying to take our values, reimagine them, not just for employees and candidates, but for our customers, right? Because mobile fueling or mobile energy, it's a new concept for a lot of people. So people don't really understand it. So what does it mean? So if you can share what your values are to people, that's going to be critical. So one of our values that we're really touting is safety, because if you think about it, we're driving a hazardous vehicle into different areas of a city, sometimes at night, sometimes it's going to be during the day because we have different types of businesses, but safety is so critical for us. So what we do to make sure that no matter where you are, no matter what type of function you're in, every meeting we require to have a safety type of point or safety type of example that you talk about. And it doesn't have to mean anything about fueling. It could be something about the pandemic. It could be something about, you see this article where you're just not paying attention and you're walking down a street in New York and you trip over an open manhole because you're so distracted by other things. And so those things are very paramount. One that just happened recently, and I didn't even mention this to you, Jacky, over the weekend, our CEO, his best friend's husband passed away from COVID, and they have 5 kids between 3 and 13. And he was a very strong anti-vaccine proponent, this person, and he got COVID and died. And what the CEO was very vulnerable, and this is in front of the whole leadership team, he goes, it's so critical, doesn't matter what your political views are, just freaking get vaccinated. I mean, people who think this is not real, look at this. And so now there's these 5 kids that his wife has to take care of, and it's just changed their life. And so having these safety tips or moments in time where you can rally people around each other, I think is very, very important. And safety is one example, but I think you get the point that's important to keep reinforcing and have some of these norms and processes a part of all throughout the company.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing your mission to life, right? And your
100%.
values to life too, and putting them into reality for people.
Yeah.
And so, I quickly want to just touch a few other examples that we've done and seen. So I think we both mentioned kind of this idea of a Friday stand-up. We call them Fridays here at Topia, but it sounds like you have them too, Ron, at Booster. And just kind of having a casual weekly touch point. We do a similar thing where we do a fun poll in one of ours. A few weeks ago, we did like a Zoom poll, ask people what their favorite type of pasta sauce is, right? We find that food and drink really get people talking. But again, it's a way of connecting people. That's probably not a question you're going to start off another meeting with of, hey, what kind of pasta do you like, right? So it's learning about each other and trying to create those connections that we're not naturally getting. We do town halls, so company-wide, all hands. I know, Ron, you and I did, this was called Fortnite at Lyft. I'm sure you do them at Booster. And then another example we have at Topia is we have a kind of subset team called Culture Catalysts that is a selected group of people that I can gather feedback from, and also I can kind of test things out on. So if we're going to roll out an engagement survey, I would typically do a run through with that team in advance to get their feedback, get their questions. They also help us kind of disseminate policies, changes, and things into the organization. So it's a really great tool and kind of strategy and a way of connecting with other people across the organization.
I love that. Is that so? Do you have people from different orgs or?
Yeah. Yeah, so it used to be different office. It was by office before the pandemic, and then we made the shift to by team. And it's even shifted more now because of time zones and Zoom, where it's actually turned into almost like one-on-one, just connecting with each of these folks versus like a big group, just because it's easier. But yeah, it's ad hoc and just people that I really lean on as a people leader to say, hey, like, what's really going on? Tell me what's really going on. What's your feedback? What would be helpful? It's just one channel, feedback channel that we have. So I find that that's been great to continue to leverage. So conscious of time here. So, again, we've talked about a lot, but for folks on the call, or if you're like, great, this all sounds wonderful, but like, where do I go from here? Just to wrap this up in a bow, I think, a first step is really determine your approach and your philosophy. And that starts with, what is your business approach? What are you trying to solve for? What can and can't you do as an organization? And making sure that your leadership is completely bought in, because it will fall flat if that's not. And again, that usually starts with, what are you trying to solve for, and bringing that conversation back up to the business impact and having that inform your talent strategy. Determine your current footprint. So, where did people go? What we were talking about, we don't even know where people are right now. There are absolutely technologies that can help with this, Topia being one, but there's a lot of different ways that you can measure this. And what are you compliant is a really, I think, good question for every organization to be asking themselves right now, and figuring out how they're going to mitigate any risks that they're potentially in already. And the last is develop your supporting infrastructure, right? What are your culture values? What policies are you putting in place? Training and enablement for managers, as an example, and for people. Do you have the right people in place to develop this strategy, and the right mindsets? Can you develop your people into thinking from a location agnostic perspective? And then lastly, but again, to me, not to keep beating the drum here, but probably most importantly, what technology do you have in place to really make sure that you are enabling yourselves as an HR organization, and further the rest of the organization? So with that, we'd love to open up for questions. And Ron and I both have our email addresses here too. If anyone has specific questions and they want to reach out or connect after this, we're more than happy to do that as well.
Yep. Okay. So we've had one come in. So this one is about how how to balance the need to know employee location with employee privacy.
How to balance that? Okay. Yeah, so it's an interesting one. We've had this come up at Topia as well, of employees kind of having this first reaction of, why do you need to know exactly where I am? And I think it comes back to starting with why. And that's what I said earlier around the reason is from a compliance, a tax, a regulatory perspective. And it's not just for the employer, it's also for the employee. And a lot of people don't know that. In the US, a great example, if you're working in to be very big brother. It's really from a place of trying to protect the organization and the people. We also, that was part of our ADAPT survey, we asked this question of what people were comfortable with from a tracking perspective, and found that I think it was over 85%, or at least over 80% of employees were comfortable with their employer knowing where they were, almost down to the street level, right? So I think this is a little bit of a misconception that employees won't be okay with this, and knowing where they are. I think we need to just make sure we're framing it in the right way and people understand why we need to know.
Great, thank you. We've just had another one come in. Not all roles can be carried out remotely. How do you address the differences in terms of equality and fairness?
Yeah. See, that's when I speak to like the team determined approach, because not all roles can be done remotely. Like I'll give you two examples: hardware, inside sales. So from that perspective, usually you're going to have people in office on a regular basis, so that you can learn from each other. You can have that camaraderie that you really can't get on a Zoom location. So in terms of fairness and equality, you have to be consistent across that team, no matter what location they're in. So if you're in an area that, just as a policy to throw out there, if you have 5 or more people in a certain area, they all have to be in an office. If it's less than 5, then you have meetings with them all through one screen. So if you're in a location that has 10 people, you're going to log into meetings through your computer screen. So it feels like everyone is in the same type of playing field. So there's ways to do it, but that's why that team determined, I think, is critical way of thinking about it, versus just coming in 2 days a week versus 3 days a week, or things of that nature.
Yeah, I saw a great example. Google, as they rolled out articles of the changes they were making to their offices, they created these pods where screens were as big as the seats for the people, so that regardless if you were in the office or on the screen, you were having, you had an equal presence in the meeting. And that's obviously an extreme example,
awesome.
but yeah, it's the same idea, Ron, of making sure that people who are home and not able to be in an office, creating the space for people to have as much of a similar experience as possible to drive that consistency. All right.
Okay, perfect. So we're on the hour. So thank you so much to Jacky and to Ron, and thank you to everyone for joining us. I'll be sharing the recording shortly. If you do have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Really,
thank you, Ron.
Really enjoyed it. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.